Hello and welcome back to the Coaches Corner. We've taken a little bit of a sabbatical, but we are back. The coaches are here. And don't forget that today is brought to you by the Endurance Lab by Team ODZ, where you can join the coaches here live as we recap the week and answer your questions from the forum. My name's Jason Flores, one of your Endurance Lab coaches, and today I'm joined by Ian Murray, Mitch Stangerman, and our nutritional therapist, Andrea Cullen. Good morning, everybody. How you doing?
Morning, guys.
Good morning.
I like the look that Andrea's got going. It's very Hollywood. Like, it's just me. Like, everything else is blurry. I really like it. So just a reminder, you could always ask questions to us, and you can send them over to coaches@endurancelab.fit or head over to the forum at discuss.endurancelab.fit as well. I'll post the links here in the show notes. So if you'd like to add a question that you want to hear us to talk about, you can drop it there. We're going to go get ahead and get started today. And today we're going to be talking about Spring Training Lab. And this is our upcoming lab. I'm going to throw it directly over to Ian. He's going to tell you a little bit about the lab that we have coming up that's starting this week. And there is time still to get added to this lab this week. We do late starts here as well. And so if you'd like to get added on and you hear this, we can get you added this week. So Ian, tell us a little bit about the Spring Training Lab.
Thanks, Jason. So the Spring Training Lab is really focused on people who are trying to get in some earlier events in the season. Now, for some people who live in Southern California or the southern states, they may already be full-on racing season. The rest of us who have had to suffer through horrible, disastrous, just Arctic winters, this is about the time when things are really starting to pick up. So there may have been one or two early season races, but those were just kind of getting back into it. The Spring Lab is all focused on building on what we've already been working on over the last 2 or 3 months, and trying to fine-tune you, get you some explosive power, get that ability for you to put in those harder efforts. And even if you're not a racer, this is a great time for you to work on some higher end. And we're not talking Mark Cavendish. Well, we didn't use him. We're not talking some Fernando Gaviria sprints or Sagan sprints. But what we are talking is that ability to push. So if you're just doing your local rides and you're finding yourself getting dropped off the back slowly, and then when you work hard to get back on, then you're dead. Well, this is actually that kind of lab that is going to help with that. So you can do that push to get back into the draft if you get dropped slightly on an uphill or a rolly section, and then you'll be strong enough to recover, because we're going to teach you how to do that while we're riding hard. So that's what this Spring Lab is about. It's not just for high-end racers like Jason. It's more for Mitch.
That's awesome.
And myself. No, but that's what we're really focused on in the Spring Lab. So you can expect to develop some of that top end power and speed with the ability to recover at it and be able to really survive and thrive at that 60 to 90 day or 60 to 90 minute effort. So we're talking a 35 to 45 mile ride or race. And that's what we really want to focus on. We think that's a good sweet spot for everybody right now.
So how long are the sessions, Ian, just regarding a nutrition perspective?
Yeah, from a nutrition perspective, we're not trying to tap everybody out early on. So we're looking at the longer sessions start pushing 90 minutes to 2 hours. So we don't really have anything that is of the epic endurance level. I think I'm looking real quick. I think our longest is an hour 32. Yeah. But the important part of those hour 32 sessions are they're pretty consistent efforts. And so if you think, oh, it's only 90 minutes, I don't really need to worry about fueling. Well, it's 90 minutes of effort. And Andrea can talk a little bit more intelligently about that, because I just, put candy next to my bike.
Yeah. I think the reason I'm asking that question is that at this part of the season as well, a lot of people are trying to cut weight. Right. And they're trying to do it aggressively with big expectations. So it sounds to me like this lab has quite a bit of intensity or work specifics in there. So instead of thinking, oh, I might not eat before this session and stretch it out a bit, you want to put your nutrition around your session and lean it out the rest of the day. So if you're training in the morning, make sure you have your breakfast. If you're training in the evening, make sure you have a snack before it and get the carbohydrate in from roots or grains around the session, but maybe stick to lower carb depending on your recovery the rest of the day. But you want to prioritize that session. And mentally, I think that can be hard for people, because then they feel like they're not burning themselves in the sessions. But the point of the session isn't to burn yourself, it's to build.
And so I'm actually a walking example of what Andrea talks about.
Yeah.
Because I just got done, I showered, and I'm actually reloading up with some fruits, vegetables, and some carbs and
Good
some
stuff.
protein. So
Yeah. I think it's
I'm not just drinking because I'm hungry. I'm setting an example.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, I think it is important, especially for the longer, 90-minute plus range, to take some of that time to make sure that you are fueling properly and you are feeling well. Example and kind of a comment on kind of what Ian was talking about. And it's over the weekend, I went out to a ride that was, had a good amount of climbing, 5,000 plus. And people came out like it was the middle of the season, just going hard from like the bottom of the climb. And it was nuts. And I was like, I can't believe it's, March, April, and people are like in this kind of, ready to do a 1 hour climb like all out. Luckily, some people petered out. Fueling always comes an issue when you're doing a 1 hour climb. But I think it's important to kind of practice that and get dialed in on wattages. And that's what this lab's going to do for you. It's going to get you an idea of kind of where your tempo is, where your sweet spot is, and be able to use that and be able to fuel that so that you're able to use that when you get outdoors. And
Andrew,
we'll get a good example of that here today too. Go ahead.
Andrea, if you could real quick talk, for some people, you mentioned people trying to diet, and the fad recently is the trend keto.
Oh, man.
Can you just talk real quick about high intensity?
Real quick.
And just real quick about if you're trying to adapt to keto, Vice already being on keto, just what you could expect to feel when you do high intensity.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. Yeah, I think it's one of those things that it's so hard, right, Andrea? Like you're just not getting the fuel of what you're trying to do. Like we're not an ultra endurance group. It's not like hundreds upon double centuries that we're going at this zone 1, zone 2. I think that's where I feel that a lot of it is. Wouldn't you agree? Like it's this long, low pace, but I don't think this explosive stuff that we're training for isn't getting fueled by that same sort of level at. Right?
Yeah, and even that long, slow pace still uses some carbohydrate.
Sure.
Our body isn't an all or nothing fuel user.
Yeah.
It needs a little bit of the carbs at the lower intensities, and it needs a lot of the carbs at the higher intensities, and it uses a little bit of fat at the higher intensities and a lot more fat at the lower intensities. But that depends on your diet as well. So if you're used to eating carbohydrates and suddenly you totally take them out, you haven't even trained your body to be fat efficient. And also, the more fat efficient athletes are the ones that have more experience, that they've been athletes or training like an athlete for years. So you do need, carbohydrates aren't the devil. Carbohydrates aren't make us fat. In fact, if I was concerned about, just say you have an early race and you're trying to lose a little bit of weight for that early race and the training intensity is going up, I would shave the calories off fat at the moment, because you need the protein and you need the carbs. And the fats aren't really helping that type of training, and you're going to shave those calories off a little bit better. Now, I would never advocate a low fat diet for a long time, because fats are essential to us, but I would start to be a bit more mindful about where they're sneaking in. If that was what you were needing to do, you've got a race in 2 to 3 months, you need to lose a bit of calories or weight. The training intensity is ramping up where you're doing intensity work, hill rep work, strength work. You need the fueling. So don't drop the carbs. Think about what your training is like, what you're trying to achieve, and work from there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I did also offer up a couple suggestions on the Endurance Lab forum for quick ways to lose weight.
Yeah.
So you can check that out. Raging food poisoning is one.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It usually involves sickness, travel, airports. Those are all good. My 6-year-old is really good at that. Just like touching everything and then touching his face. Oh. Yeah. So still in that. So, go ahead, man.
Isn't it just really just being healthy?
Yeah.
Right. Eating healthy. I mean, I could think about going on a keto plan, but I mean, there's so many other things I could do, like get rid of the alcohol, get rid of the ice cream, get rid of the useless snacking.
Stop that foul language, you.
Maybe not get rid of it, but let's maybe just reduce it some. Instead of like maybe 2 or 3 drinks, you just have 1 drink. Instead of the large ice cream, you get a small. I mean, there's all these ways we can shave calories without going on radical like diet changes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, get rid of the junk.
So
just clean it up.
So in Ian's example, we should put the carbs around the meal. So you should have ice cream before your workout and a beer right after as post-workout, and then you just have the beer, right?
That's what I did on Saturday, and it was really joyous. So.
Yeah, well, we can...
You just go with donuts.
There you go. There you go. All right, so before we move on, I just wanted to do a quick round back to talk a little bit about if people were new to Endurance Lab. You know, we've been coaching here for some time now, and maybe talk a little bit about who the Endurance Lab is for and kind of the things that they could get or they could expect out of the Endurance Lab. So maybe we just go around kind of what our experiences are and how it has evolved. I mean, we definitely were doing a lot of indoor training kind of separately. Ian's been doing a lot of coaching even before that. But how will we see it change, and what are we addressing, I guess, in the equation, and how can we help riders? We're going to start. Go ahead and start, Ian. We'll go around the circle. Yeah. I was like, who goes first? Who's on first? Who's on first?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think is really important for folks looking at how they're training, there's a couple different things. The Endurance Lab is specifically not focused on one niche group, right? We try to make it fairly broad, but in doing so, we're really focused on being an open place for people who are very new to come in and not feel that they're having to train for the Tour de France and that it's a bunch of psycho triathletes and roadies. So we try to have the attitude of very open. We try to almost have like an ultra running or mountain biking cross type attitude in the Endurance Lab, but we also do have the capability to work with much higher end racers. So if the idea of the lab is to bring someone in who's basically new and help guide them through the process of learning how to train, learning how to fuel, and then optimizing their training base for people who are not professional athletes. So people who work for a living, maybe have kids, married, multiple times, multiple families, how they try to balance it, whatever.
So basically, we're the big love of cycling training. Is that what we are?
Yes.
No, but yeah, the big love of cycling. And then we have different elements of our program to move them through. And then ideally, as they develop, they use what they've learned, share their experiences with the newer people coming in, and then we improve as a whole, as a group, and then individually we try to optimize our performance at races. For those who are trying to race or Grand Fondos or century rides or Zwift racing, or the neighborhood crit with their kids. I mean, some people are coming on just to be able to beat their 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds on a crit, Jason. So there's different levels, and like I said, that's what we're really focused on the lab. And the other part of this too is what we try to do is we try to make it extremely affordable, because we're not trying to cater towards the people who every year buy their $10,000 bike. They want to get a super posh training plan, but they're not really interested in dealing with people. We're trying to create a community, and so therefore we offer the coaching, we offer the training, we offer the fueling, the nutrition advice, and we can go more in depth as we need to, but it's accessible for all levels.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's really cool with, like, everyone's really busy and you're buying a plan for 8 weeks, and you have the ability to move that around in your training peaks a little bit. But when you have a busy day and you come home from work, you just get on your bike and there it is in Zwift. So you just do it, and someone's thought about what you're going to do and the logic of how your week is going to go. And if anyone has difficulty slotting that into a crazy week, well, the forum is there. Or if anyone has feedback on sessions or challenges, or is this erg or whatever, well, generally you have all the instructions in there. The forum is a support. And I don't know, I like just coming from the nutritionist and not the coach, you really see people grow.
Yeah, I think that's where community is key, and getting people together doing the same sort of thing, building themselves over time, I think is important. And I guess the second part of this question was if this 8 weeks doesn't match where you want it to be. For example, if your event or what you're building is in the end of the year, let's say November, we have some things in the works that we'll be introducing over the next couple of weeks that I think you'll be excited about. So with this 8-week lab, I think just getting a taste of what we have and what we're working with right now, I think it's important. And then you can go back and kind of see how the community has been built, and then moving forward, we have some thoughts that I think you'll be interested in as we move into the rest of this. Was there anything else you wanted to add there, Mitch?
I was just gonna say, to me, one of my my core kind of philosophy is always about consistency. And I think it's for so many people who are just beginning to train and just beginning to get serious, maybe about their cycling or their triathlon, it's really building that consistency. And I think that these plans and this group really allow you to build that consistency. So it's the ability week after week and over time to build that fitness in a gradual and progressive manner.
Yeah.
Y más importante, se habla español y voy a convertir todos los planes a español para los amigos que viven en América Sur.
So it's very important that that you also speak Spanish.
Hey, I can do Irish if you want.
That you're able to talk to your friends while you're doing your training.
That was not what I said. That's not what I said.
The nice version. All right. And I think
it was simply that I'm
I have 2 more questions.
Oh, go ahead.
So if someone's watching this for the first time and they think, oh, I don't know if I can manage that 8-week lab that you're doing at the moment, do you still have the basic starter one available that I did after I was sick and I came back, which I enjoyed?
Yeah. It was a lot of like the one with like couch lane and like a lot of like walks in the park with holding hands with your loved ones. That one? Is that the one we're looking for?
No.
We do have a good starter lab. You're right. That was actually a really good one, I think, that we worked on. So if you're looking to get ramped back up, we do have those labs to grab onto, and we can get that loaded up for you as well. I guess one last thing I wanted to add is a lot of times people will think that a lot of indoor training will just make you fast indoors. A lot of the skills that you're going to be wanting to transition to outdoors, we will be working on and talking about in the forum and that sort of thing. So if you've just been sitting on ERG kind of all this time and hitting wattages, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised that a lot of our workouts will require you to be out of ERG, but also translate to outdoor strength. So something to think about if it is your first time.
And I have one more question.
Yeah, go ahead. You did say you had 2.
Are you leading? Explain. Are you leading rides?
We do lead rides with Team ODZ, but they aren't the workouts at this time in the module. No. So I was thinking as we transition from indoor to outdoor, and we talk about the spring training lab, the coaches want to talk a little bit about what sort of things should we be thinking about as we transition our bikes, our bodies, our training, both on the bike and on the run from indoors to outdoors. So we're going to have a little bit of conversation about that. We did a really great article from one of our partners, Training Peaks. We'll put a link into the show notes, but just wanted to talk a little bit about bike considerations. And I know Mitch has just recently taken his bike off the trainer. It was kind of stuck. He had to kind of work it out. But maybe
stop. It had been in California the week before.
It was. He did have some good rides. He got out. So as he made that transition, maybe he could touch a little bit about how he got ready before that, and then Mitch can touch a little bit about how he transitioned from for outdoor runs, what he recommends. So what did you do getting ready to get out to California here, Mitch?
To me it wasn't really that big of a consideration. I mean, it was really just checking through everything. I just the basic maintenance. I cleaned the drivetrain. I had to take it apart some to ship it out to California, so I had to go back together again. So you are checking the tightness, the seats, the handlebars, all those kind of things. But it was really cleaning the drivetrain for me because it had gotten pretty mucky over the winter in the basement and a couple rides outside. So, I mean, I think it's just really cleaning things up and making sure that they're working right. And the tires, right, the pressure, can't forget that, but that's easy.
Brakes.
So brakes.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had those after indoor season, and the brakes are just seized up and that sort of thing, and those are all important.
To me, it's more it's once you get outside, remembering those skills that you have neglected, right? So when I'd gone to California for a week and I shipped my bike out, and the first day I did a pretty simple, shorter ride, which I think was good because the next day I was doing a really long climb and then a really long descent, and even that still felt a little hairy because I hadn't been outside and I hadn't been doing that in a long time, and we don't get those descents in Michigan anyway. So it's
fair. Mitch is not a good descender on Zwift.
Right. Yeah. I ride right through people a lot.
Yeah,
sometimes.
all of us do, don't we? I feel like.
But I mean, it's finding a ride where you can actually practice those skills and maybe get back up to speed before you tackle something too big.
Yeah.
So I have a quick question. We talk about cleaning, and Andrea, this is where I need your input. Hypothetically, if you were traveling and Garen washed his bike in the guest bathroom shower, would that bother you?
If he's doing anything to do, Actually, it's the leg shaving that's mostly the concern. And will the hotel ever have us back again? No, if he needs to, if whatever he needs to do, that's if it's for a
There you
race,
go.
then that's what needs to be done.
I think if you clean the bathtub when you're done, I think you're okay.
You're
Okay, good.
Yeah. Sounds like it's been done more than once in a couple of our instances. So yeah, I
Maybe
think
yesterday.
yeah, maybe yesterday. So I think keeping with the bike considerations, I think understanding how much you've been training, but the big thing is getting awareness. Because indoors, you're very tunnel vision. You're not looking around. Your head's not on a swivel. You got to get back to using those in your safety features, as far as like making sure you're aware, making sure you're being predictable. If you're riding with a group of riders, 5, 10, whatever size it is, you need to make sure that you're looking out for them and being a smart rider. And gaining those skills back. Obviously, we hope that you've ridden on the road before, making sure that you're taking those into consideration, stopping at stop signs when it's appropriate and within the law. And then, just making sure that you kind of bring yourself back to that. As far as running's concerned, coming off the treadmill, Ian, are there things that we need to make sure that our runners remember?
Yeah, so that's actually a really good one because a lot of people spent the entire winter running on treadmills, and treadmill running is not the same as outdoor running. You're going to beat yourself up a little bit more outdoors, so
Yeah.
you need to dial it back a little bit for a couple reasons. One is when you're on the treadmill, you're just picking your feet up and putting them down. You're not really having to push, and even the whole concept of bringing it up to 1% or more, you're still not pushing as much, so it's not necessarily equivalent. And you do on most decks on a treadmill, it's significantly softer. So the return of energy is not quite the same as if you're running on pavement, concrete, brick. Those are the things that actually will bang you up pretty good. So I always recommend, if people have access to it, your first outdoor run should be on a nice trail or asphalt paved path if you can find it. Running on the sidewalk, because generally sidewalks are concrete, is the second worst, in my opinion, to brick. I've done both, and I hate them.
You never think that asphalt and concrete would have that much of a difference, but it makes sense when you mention it now.
It does, and the other thing too is sometimes people on treadmill lose their form because they just focus on pick them up, put them down, pick them up, put them down, and so they will start striding differently on a treadmill than they will on the road. So you have to be cognizant of that. That whether you're a heel striker or forefoot or midfoot striker, which there is no difference of where your foot contacts the ground. It's all about where your weight goes on your foot. If as long as your foot is underneath your hips when your weight goes on it, you're good. Just pure contact point doesn't matter. But what happens a lot of time is on a treadmill, people will start putting the weight a little further forward because it's just the function of they're not having to push. And so when you put your weight further forward, generally you're heel striking and you're not getting a dampening effect. So when you midfoot strike, you get a dampening effect. Or if you're heel striking, but your contact point is not your weight bearing point, then you're still getting a dampening effect through your leg. Whereas if your contact point of your heel is your weight bearing point, and that just reverberates all of that force back up through your body. So just be cognizant of that when you're doing it. Start slow, start easy, and reduce the mileage a little bit in that first week or so until you can push it back out.
So are you saying that you can expect to have a little bit more muscle soreness afterwards, joint soreness? So maybe using better compression running pants like the CWX or 2xU, adding, getting a bit more fish oil or oily fish, olive oil, coconut oil, turmeric, ginger, things like that. You didn't mention toe running. I was just back from New York, and I don't know what is going on in New York City. Everyone was running on their toes.
Toe running?
As in
like a
landing
horse.
on the front. On conference calls.
Well, I'm a 4-foot runner mostly, and if you watch me run, my heels just tap, right? So I don't strike. But there's a couple philosophies that have gone out there. Pose running is one of them.
Yeah.
And look, what I can tell you is, biomechanically speaking, 4-foot running is, in theory, the most efficient and effective. Right. However, that being said, everybody's body is different. and it is not biomechanically acceptable for some bodies. And there are a few pro marathoners who rock back a little bit in their rear midfoot strikers for the first 25 or 23 miles of the race. And then when they're going for it, they come back up to their toes.
Huh.
So I'm going to look for some videos that I have that show extension and push through, because really it's the extension and push through out the back that is much more important than where you make contact. And that's what I was talking about. Contact forward doesn't matter. It's where the weight is actually placed onto your foot that matters. And it's really about the foot location forward or after of the hips. And if you're under the hips, that's ideal. If you're forward, it doesn't really matter whether you're foot striking or forefoot or heel striking. You're not doing your body any good that way.
Yeah, and I think with mileage too, as Ian had mentioned, kind of working up the mileage in the same way Mitch talked about it, like a pre-ride or a shorter ride that kind of makes sure you work out the bugs. Maybe you go with a friend that that goes for a shorter ride where you make sure that everything's working and that sort of thing. It's important. And to kind of work your way up. If you've been doing 60 to 90 minutes, know that you've probably got that endurance to do 60 or 90 minutes on the bike, but making sure that everything is kind of gelling together is important. I think we're good.
Oh, lastly, yeah. One thing, practice working your water bottles.
Yeah.
When you're on your trainer.
I know.
Because most people set them on the chair next to them or a stand, and that chair ain't coming with you on your outdoor ride.
Yeah.
Stand.
Yeah.
So I have a question actually on the switch from indoor to outdoor. We blew up a tax wheel recently, so I was left with none, and I did a lot of reading around on forums, and at the end of it all, I just put a Continental back on my wheel.
Mm-hmm.
I'm generally, if I need my bike checked, I'll go, Garen, will you check my bike? But what are we looking for regarding wear on the tires? And, here in Ireland, the weather is, we've got a storm going on outside, so it's wet and really windy. So you're generally going to be riding on slippery roads. What do you recommend around tires and things? And
yeah,
so I don't. I used to run a non-smart trainer, right? So a fluid trainer where the wheel was in contact.
Yeah.
And for a long time, I used a trainer tire specifically in a separate wheel. And then when that started to fail, I used another wheel. But I wouldn't have actually ridden, and I think some people do, but I would not have ridden that tire outside, because to me, it gets hot and it kind of, it wears and it gets loses its tread a little bit. So I would always have an indoor tire, and then I'd have outdoor tires, and I would just change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but for outdoors, I actually recommend for most people just run an Armadillo, or there's a couple equivalents of that. Specialized has one. It's pretty much a bulletproof tire.
Yeah.
So you're not you have less of a risk of punctures.
Yeah.
And flatting out. And that's just for training. I don't recommend it for a race necessarily.
Yeah.
Unless you are deathly afraid of changing a tire. It has more rolling resistance and it's heavier. But those are great tires. Anything of that level. The other key point is you want to look at your sidewalls to make sure there's no fraying, that you can't see any of that you're not wearing through. And if you can actually see steel wires, you've worn it down. I've done that. And then the other thing is keeping your tire pressure up, because that's another thing I've seen a lot of people is they go, well, it's a soft ride, I don't need the tire pressure up. Firm tires push debris out.
Yeah.
So yes, lower tire pressure is a more supple, gentle, but friendly ride. But standing on the side of the road, changing your tire or changing your tube is not very friendly.
Yeah.
So I almost always run at max tire pressure for non-races for training.
Yeah.
And because it pushes debris out of the way, and you're less likely to get a side puncture as well.
That's interesting.
And then, and the other last thing I'll throw on there with tires is if you have a cut on your tire when you're out riding, changing your tube is not going to solve that problem. Because if the tire is compromised itself, you're actually going to open it up when you put air back in it, and the tube will start sticking out and you'll puncture again.
Yeah.
So make sure even though you may not use a gel, always carry a gel or like a $5 bill or something, because you can boot the tire that way. You can put it in the wall of the tire, and it'll keep pressure and protect that tube so you can get home or ride another 25 miles.
Yeah, and I think just the last two things to jump on Ian for the sidewall. a lot of our tires will also have a wear mark, so you'll be able to take a look and see how far you've worn. If you're using that same tire indoor and outdoors, making sure that it hasn't worn down past that point. A lot of time with indoor trainers and the rollers, you'll find that they get kind of squared off versus being more round, and they'll get more squared off. So just need to be careful of that. Having a separate tire is definitely ideal. It doesn't need to be a trainer tire per se. You could have just an old tire that you have retired from outdoors, and it's fine. I've run them both ways, and that's been good. Excellent. All right. So as we transition from getting our riders from indoor to outdoor, we actually have some riders that have actually made it outdoors into their first races and rides. We did want to kind of highlight a race that, a ride that Mitch had done recently, just over the weekend, and he could tell us a little bit about it. I will post a link in the show notes to share the event with you. And if you're interested or in the local area and riding, definitely a really great event from what it sounded like over the weekend. So Mitch, tell us, how dirty did you get and how was it?
Yeah, so I think it was Saturday morning.
Yeah.
Did what's called Barry Roubaix. It started 11 years ago here in the Midwest. I think some guys were just out riding the local hills and dirt and realized this is just a really great area. Why don't we make this formal and start a race? And it's grown over time. I think the first year it had a few hundred people, and this year it had over 3,500 people across 4 different distances. So they had a 22-mile, a 36, 62, and 100-mile race. And it's in where it's called Hastings, Michigan. So it's actually in Barry County, and it's just kind of like a spring classic, right? So they call it Barry Roubaix, and it's primarily dirt and gravel. Really kind of an up and down, hilly ride. I don't believe there was any climb that was maybe more than 300 feet or 200 feet, but the total elevation on the ride was about 4,000. So it was a lot of rollers and a few kind of steep climbs. They actually had, I think, for the 100-mile race was only in its second year, and they had over 300 participants for that. They actually had a guy last year ride that 100 miles on a penny farthing.
Whoa. That's awesome.
So what's really cool is that there's pros in the race. So there's some guys from Panaracer team that came out, and those guys finished it in, I think, 2 hours and 40-ish minutes, so about a 22-mile-an-hour pace. And you had everything from pros to just recreational riders. You had guys on really nice gravel bikes to fat tires. There was a guy who I believe was riding the 100 miles on a fat tire bike.
Wow.
Which was, and I think, so he was actually friends of I ran into my college roommate at the ride before and after, and it was their friend. I think he was still out there after 7 hours.
Wow.
Plugging away, which is kind of a long time.
Yeah.
So, but real quick, so, I mean, the ride has like a couple really cool climbs that are iconic. They call Three Sisters in the Wall. They actually have a bagpipe band on the main climb, kind of playing at the 3/4 point.
Awesome.
There's a section called Sega Road, which is 1 mile, and I'd call it 2-track at best. So it was like heavy sand and mud and rocks, right through kind of like, like the West Virginia kind of woods. Like there's signs out if you hear banjos playing, ride faster. So a lot of people walking there, and I'll say, it was muddy, and I only ran, I think, 32-millimeter tires on my bike, so I walked a couple points during that section because there's no way that I could ride through the sand really effectively, not with the crowd. But it was a great race. It was harder than I thought it was going to be. Handful of lessons I think that I took away from it, and really look forward to doing it again next year.
Nice.
Yeah, I think these always pose really interesting things that you kind of have to come across. And gravel races has gotten so much more
it's growing
popular
so
these days.
dramatically.
Yeah, I mean, even the local group right here has 2 groups where half of it is during our normal route, and then half the people like turn off into this like dirt road. I'm like, I don't want to get dirty. But
and I was lucky because it didn't rain, and it rained the day before, but it had dried out, so I didn't really get dirty in this one. I did one a few years ago where I came out completely filthy. But I mean, there's, like I was saying, there's things that I took away. Like I had been told beforehand that really using in camelbacks instead of bottles was a good idea. Kind of mixed whether whether it was really that great of an advantage. I mean, it was nice. I didn't have to worry about losing a bottle. I didn't have to worry about like refilling at a certain point. I had more than enough water. Probably didn't think about my nutrition well enough. Jason's laughing. He's not surprised. Used a few gels and it seemed to work. Weather. What's funny is I live in Michigan and I know this to my soul that the weather is never really able to be forecasted. So the day before I was told it was going to be 51 degrees at race time. I planned accordingly and got there and it was 40 degrees at race time.
That's horrible.
Like shivering. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had basically planned to use a kit, a tech shirt underneath and arm warmers and leg warmers because that would have been fine for the 50 to 60. I ended up taking a long sleeve shirt that was from a half marathon that I was going to change into when I was done and put it on underneath everything. And it was cold and it was incredibly windy. So it was a little bit miserable there.
Did the Camelback make you sweaty and then get cold, or how did that work?
No, you know what? I think with the wind and everything, it was fine. And I'm not sure if it was the Camelback or if it was the toll of the dirt and gravel, but I will say that my lower back was incredibly stiff the last 20 miles.
Interesting. It does sound like a great event. And like I said, like we've got the Belgian waffle right out here. And, there's a lot of talking, there's a lot of talk in the podcast and out there about, oh man, now I can't. That Dirty Kansas that's coming up.
Yep.
And so these are the kind of rides that people are looking to do, kind of on the shorter or the longer ride. And people are just trying to get to get out there to do this new form of racing, this hybrid form of on and off road. So super interesting to hear about, Mitch. I think if you haven't had a chance, Mitch is a big supporter of this sort of thing. His bike is definitely tuned for it. It's a very plush ride from the last time we rode together. It looked very, very comfortable and able to do all different kinds of things with his bike. So I think that's really interesting.
So I do have a question for Andrea, or actually for the group. So one thing I did experience, which is not common for me, was an incredible amount of cramping throughout my lower body. So within the first 5 miles, the right calf cramped, the second 5 miles, the left calf cramped, and then the right quad started to cramp. And apparently those muscles are opposed. So when you try to actually stretch out the right calf, the right quad then cramps. So, and then near the end, the left one did. So I was kind of like hemmed into really a middle section of power, because anytime I tried to push it, I started to cramp. So any thoughts on if it was nutrition, if it could have been warm up, or maybe all the above?
So it was colder than.
Yeah, that's the question.
You were cold. And was there a lot more climb? But you cramped in really soon. So could you say it was to do with the climbing?
No,
or?
It wasn't a fast start either. I mean, it was really odd that before anything really got going.
Anxious or tense?
Nah.
Yeah.
I came in with the attitude it was I originally planned to really target this, and then with life and everything, I really came into the attitude, look, this is just the first time I'm doing this, and we're going to really take it all in, because it's just kind of a big event.
And nothing changed on your bike fit in the traveling or anything like that? Nothing.
I mean, it was a 2-hour car ride. That's the only thing I could maybe think that I was sitting kind of.
Oh, I wondered, did you any stretching after the driving? Because the driving could be the culprit there. I mean, we get really tight in the hip flexors and in our lower back.
Probably.
And then I guess climbing, it can affect the lower back more, can't it? Should you be getting out of the saddle a little bit? You guys are the coaches there.
So I climb a lot in the saddle.
Yeah.
It's just where I'm comfortable. I mean, even on like the largest climb, I think I was seated on Saturday.
Nice. Yeah, sometimes you get that freak thing, between driving intensity and I just cold, man. I mean, like, especially, I know you do some riding and running outdoors, but still, like, being out there, you're probably out there an hour before doing registration.
I was, yeah.
You know what I mean? You're not just jumping out the car on like a ride that you've planned on. You get out, and you get warmed up. You're out standing around, freezing, shivering, and your body's just trying to shut down. And then you're getting on the bike and trying to move. It sounds like a freak thing to me. If it was that early on, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And did it end up?
I mean, it was.
Did it work itself out? Or?
No, it was there the whole ride. I mean, it was funny as near the end when the left one started to left quad started to cramp. I was just like, you got to be kidding me. I mean, and you'd hit a hill and you'd try to like push and then you'd start to cramp. So I was pacing off this one guy, or we were pacing each other for like 10 miles. And then we hit this like short punchy climb and I started to, hang with him, and all of a sudden I started to cramp, and I was like, all right, well, there goes that ride, right?
Oh, man, that's right.
If so that's going to be in the back of your mind for the next one. So I would definitely bring something with you next time, like the hot shots, the products that work on the neuromuscular function, to see if that would help break the cramp, because that's how they work. I would also explore what was going on for you in the last month regarding nutrition, magnesium intake, electrolyte intake. It doesn't sound like you got it wrong on the date. Well, like, I don't think putting an extra electrolyte in the camel pack was going to save you there. But I would explore the previous couple of weeks' stress levels, caffeine intake, dark leafy green intake, how your sleep was, tension, are you doing a lot of driving? Are you doing a lot of computer work? Could a rub have helped? Or I know like stretching is a funny thing, but I do think when we have a lot of stress and we're tense, to do some kind of body kind of movement, flow, relax, that sort of thing can be helpful. So it sounds like it could have been a couple of things. That's really frustrating though.
Yeah.
You know what? It still was a good outcome, and I think you always want to be faster.
Yeah.
But with the wind and first time and the toll of the roads, it was still fun. It was still a blast. So.
Yeah.
And you were into a headwind going uphill, weren't you?
It was a constant headwind.
Just feel one of those rides that just
You're gonna
constant.
be tense.
Yeah.
I mean, anytime you'd come over a climb and you'd be like, all right, so I'm gonna just have some nice, level or downhill. Then you just get hit by the wind.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
and that do you remember Nate was teaching us to do that body check?
I do.
So, maybe if you caught yourself, you would have realized, you were braced for the wind and you're braced for climbing, and the head is just thinking about so much that's going on around you, and maybe, a bit of relaxation work and a bit of deep breathing as you go on the bike could have been helpful. Who knows? It's all stuff to learn, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah, super important. Great. So events like this, if you have an event that you are interested in hearing about, we'll fly out and ride it. How about that, guys? But definitely fun to hear about our early events. I mean, it's super fun to get out there if we've been in the trainer for so long. And so sharing those stories is definitely fun for all of our riders as well. All right, it looks like we're going to wrap it up today. We've got some good time. I want to thank you guys for joining us today here in the Coach's Corner, and we hope that it has been informative. And if you have a question and you'd be interested in hearing us to talk about it, send it over to coaches@endurancelab.fit or head over to the forum at discuss.endurancelab.fit. And if you like what you hear, we'd love that if you were to share it with your friends. And don't forget, you can reach us at let me grab our Instagram handles here. Our Instagram handle is The Endurance Lab on Instagram and at Endurance Lab on Facebook. And so if you're looking for more information on when the next lab is, head over to endurancelab.fit to learn where you can join us to train smart and get results. We'll see everybody next week. Have a great week.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.